land by her fingers. But he replies with okay every time, every time. She doesn't know who he is. No, she doesn't know what he's up to. Oh, she doesn't know who he is. Yeah. He doesn't see her. He sees right through her. Oh, she doesn't know who he is. No, she doesn't know what he's up to. Oh, her heart gets broken every time, every time. She doesn't know who he is. No, she doesn't know what he's up to. Oh, she doesn't know who he is. She doesn't know who she is. I can't tell you why. All I know is that I know I feel it deep inside. I couldn't shake this even if I tried. I can't tell you how. Something's telling me that if we walk away right now, we may never know what love is all about. Every rooftop talk, every stolen kiss, every late night walk, every secret wish, every second chance, every time we dance underneath the light of street lamp.
Try Zaxby's Cajun Club sandwich.
Good evening, Yang Gang, and thank you for joining Securing the Bag with Seth Underwood. I am your host, Seth Underwood, and as always, we have so much to talk about and very little time to do so, because the technological singularity is at hand and the machine elves wait for no one. But do you know what's even closer than the tech singularity? The Tonight Show with Stephen Colbert, happening tonight at 11 o'clock with Andrew Yang and Tom Holland, the best Spider-Man. I got to admit, when I first saw Tom Holland as Spider-Man, I saw the announcement. I was looking and I was like, he's got nothing on Tobey Maguire, but he's done a pretty good job. He's moved up to the top of the ladder, in my opinion. Maybe not. I don't know. Honestly, I take it back. The actor who plays Nick in New Girl, the voice for Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse, he's the best Spider-Man. He is, because he's my spirit animal. That actor, just in general, because I refuse to believe that he's any different than the Nick and New Girl. You can ask anyone who knows me personally. Apparently, I am the embodiment of the character of Nick, so I'm going to have to say that he's the best Spider-Man. This has nothing to do at all with the technological singularity, but that's okay. Because I got some feedback on the last stream, and he was saying, you got to stop talking so much about Yang. Start talking a little bit about something more fun. And you know what? I agree. I don't want to get the stream just to get stale and tired over time. So I've got a special announcement. The Dividend Report is breaking new boundaries tonight. We're going to change things up just a little bit. Give me one moment here. One moment. I'm going to have to play some. Here we go. Hold on. That's right, boys and girls, this is now a Harry Potter and Quidditch commentary stream. Specifically, we're going to go with Hufflepuff, because Hufflepuff, as we all know, is the greatest house of the four, and that's just, there's no comparison at all. Hufflepuff is the greatest, because you might not know this, but Hufflepuff actually, their dormitory is right next to the kitchen. And you may not know this too, but like their house lead is the botanist, and these are all subtle hints to let you know that Hufflepuffs are the stoners. They're the misfits of Hogwarts. So right now, you may be wondering, what does this have to do with universal basic income? And I am too. But again, we're now a Hogwarts and Harry Potter stream because of the feedback that was left from that individual. So second, y'all. Okay, am I back? Okay, see, someone's casting some spells. Maybe Harry Potter's not the right way to do it. Hold on, I forgot this too. Blimey. All right. So all right. No. Okay. Enough of that. Wait. I forgot this too. I had this all prepared. I had props and everything, and now it's just falling apart. Ah, jeez. Okay. Are we there? Okay, good. So J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter while she was on welfare. So I just can't help but to think, what else could we get if financial security was provided for all? What's the next Harry Potter? What's the next cash cow that's going to be milked for millions and millions of years? I've yet to enjoy, actually, the Grindelwald, the Crimes of Grindelwald. I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was okay. It was better than the first one, I think. But at a certain point, you just gotta leave my childhood alone, And like every week, J.K. Rowling is coming out and letting me know that no, in fact, this beloved character that I've known for so long is gay, which doesn't change anything about the character. It's just like I guess I didn't really need to know that, There's some people that will only talk about their sexuality, and it's like there's more important things to talk about, We can go on, but there was a joke someone had on Twitter. They said my sexuality is a matter between me and J.K. Rowling. I love it. Internet humor is just great. But for real, I do want to kind of like grow the stream outwards a little bit. It can't just be about Yang. You know, I've spoken about wanting to speak more about like tech futurism and stuff like that, but maybe I'll speak a little bit more about myself. I don't know. Like right now I'm watching Evangelion. I was told by everyone that this is the show that you have to watch, that you absolutely have to watch. I'm really worried that my mic is, it's so fragile. I've had this thing for years. It's breaking down, but Evangelion, you know, that this is like the end all beat all anime of all time, supposedly. And I'm watching it. I have no freaking idea what's going on in this show. It's got kids, it's got mechs, it's got these crazy invader aliens and things of that nature. Every time that this protagonist gets into this mech, he's like screaming. He's having a meltdown. He's either getting attacked or he's having like severe psychological damage happening to him. It's so bizarre. There's literally this one scene that I'm watching, and they're shooting this mech up from the underground, and like the moment that he gets to the surface, they're saying, "Oh God, there's an attack coming," and like this beam of light shines and starts melting him, and he's immediately screaming. He hasn't been on the battlefield for more than 5 seconds, and he's getting melted inside of this mech. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I'm like 6 or 7 episodes in, and I like the art is fantastic. It's a beautiful piece of work for sure, but I have to admit I'm a little confused by what's going on here. I mean, my day is like 100% Andrew Yang. I am constantly scrolling through news about Yang, news about the other Democratic parties and everything. And God bless my girlfriend, because you know, I'm doing nothing except for that. So I have a feeling that I may have missed something about this show because I haven't been 100% focused in. You know, there's something really important about being able to, you know, put down your phone, put down all the other things, focus in a little bit. This is why meditation is so important. Getting control over your thoughts, getting control over your ability to understand when you're wandering, and it helps you focus in on the important things of life. Social media in general is completely ruining us in that regard. It is ruining us. As you know, with all things tech, you can use it for good, you can use it for bad. I really like Andrew Yang's policy of you know, getting down to the center of what makes social media so corrosive psychologically. I think that's a fantastic thing to be doing, to helping people deal with the consequences of never having a moment of just silent thought. Like, you ever think about how life was before social media, how life was before cell phones? You know, like going to the doctor's office and sitting, right? Sure, there's magazines and stuff, but like, have you ever thought about there's a time that you had to just sit there with your thoughts and like there's nothing to do? And you get bored and you have to just be bored? That used to be human life for 1,000, 2,000, hundreds of thousands of years, was boredom. And now it's like constant psychological stimulation. Like, you can't get away from it. You're addicted to the phone. You wake up and you know where the phone is. You know exactly where it is. And before you even like open your eyes, you're reaching over towards the phone. You're about to open it up. You're going to check Twitter. You're going to like, okay, what's people talking about right now? What has Andrew Yang said in the morning? I mean, it doesn't help that I'm trying to do this report and everything. One, because I really want to get Andrew Yang elected in any way that I can. But two, definitely if I can make this work as like a career thing, that'd be pretty awesome. You know, we got to be able to like have conversations about, you know, hey, let's focus on mental health a little bit. Put down the phone. Maybe every day for 10 minutes, like the British have, you know, tea time. Hold on, wait, I got this. You know, like the British have their tea time every day at 10 minutes. We're just going to stop. We're going to put down our phones. We're going to send out an EMP that just kills all electronic activity across the entire United States, across the entire world, and you're forced to just sit with your thoughts. Think about what you did. You know what you did. Think about it. Yeah, you know what you did. No. 10 minutes each day. Out in some green. Remember, green is the best color. Green is the best color out of all colors. So I'm just going to take a really quick look. I haven't greeted anyone in the chat yet. I want to see what you guys are talking about tonight, and it'll help me segue into whatever it is else that we'll be talking about. It's going to be a real chill stream tonight. Like I said, we're expanding boundaries. I'm going to try some different things. The growth on the Dividend Report channel overall is a little stagnant. I need to change things up a little bit. I need to find new ways of entertaining and things of that nature. Again, 200 subscribers, and I will be giving out a free copy of The War on Normal People on Audible, as long as you don't already have an Audible account. I know it's weird, but we'll be doing that. I'm wanting to head towards 1,000 subscribers so we could possibly get Super Chat. It would make commenting and okay, let's be honest, I want Super Chat because it puts a monetary barrier behind comments and it's an easier way of making money. But hey, don't blame me, okay? I am a little bit of a capitalist. I got to make money in some way. So 1,000 subscribers for $1,000 and all that. You guys know everything, but yeah, so I don't know. We may be doing some different things. I might push the stream back to 7:30. There might be, I don't know. I've been thinking about setting up like a Civ game to do like once every weekday. I got no idea. I had all these ideas for these skits and things too. Like, part of the reason why I'm a little out of whack today is I've been spending so much time on a prepared and well-edited Dividend Report episode. I know there hasn't been one in like 4 weeks, but I'm such a perfectionist that it takes me freaking forever to finally edit. Like, I'll take a take. I love live streaming because everything's one take. I can't go back. I can't fix it. With this, I'm so ADD and I'm so perfectionist that it's like, no, I got to do it again. No, I got to do it again. But I'm making a response video to the Michael Brooks thing. If you guys haven't seen it, I'm actually, we're going to be going into that on today's episode so that I can kind of get maybe some feedback on exactly how I'm doing with my response, because it's an insane kind of pushback that we're getting from the Michael Brooks and overall Bernie Sanders supporters in general. But that's no different. We've grown to expect that. The Yang Gang understands that the real enemy at this point is not from the right, it's from the left. So we're going to take a look at that video. There may be some tech issues because I have to use my headphones and things like that. So anyways, like I said, let's just take a look at some of these comments. Alyssa, Helen, Spidey, thank you guys all so much. Roland, thank you for heading into the stream and being active in the comments. Like, the Yang Gang are the important people who are involved with this. I played that song in the intro, and it might have had some triggering effects for some people, but I'd like to appropriate Never Come Down, and I want to bring it back from the dead, because some of the Trump supporters, I feel they're no longer MAGA, but they want that kind of unity that happened in 2016, and I saw it happen, where this momentum, this energy of like, wow, we're in the office and we're going all the way. We're never coming down. I want that to breathe through in the Yang Gang. It's you guys who are going to lead us to victory, not me, not the pundits. If the energy is within the comments, if the energy is within the supporters overall, then we'll get there. And during the the South Carolina fry, there was food involved, I know that. Yang jumped and crowd surfed into the audience after his speech. They were the most loud group overall. I think there were fewer than maybe Bernie supporters and things of that nature, but you can feel the energy just rippling through like chi in a Super Saiyan. We're about to burst out. It's going to happen tonight after the Tonight Show with Stephen Colbert, and on Thursday night for the debates. Oh my gosh. I really think, I think we're almost there. We're almost there. Am I going to read these comments or what? The Attack on Titan hype again. Oh, was that part of it? I know that there was a lot of like anime kind of fusion within it. And really, anytime that I would be involved with these videos, or like, because I was curious, right? You want to be, you want to be cognizant of every corner of the political sphere. And as I was seeing this energy happen in some of the more dark corners, sure, I found myself getting hype. And I was also butthurt because of what the DNC did and everything. But yeah, if we can harness that energy in some way and not be racist, that'd be great. Is that too much to ask for? Yes, you need to leave your brain alone for some time to come up with good ideas. Yeah, I think over time, it would be unrealistic to expect that our psychology hasn't evolved with that boredom. That boredom plays an important part in what it means to be human. It sucks because you don't want to be bored. People don't like to feel uncomfortable. And I've been going to the gym lately because I want to make sure that I'm like 100% during these live streams. And making yourself uncomfortable, it sucks. And especially since we live in more comfortable times, you can find ways of making sure that you're never not comfortable. But you have to be able to just, accept the fact that, man, you know what? I'm going to make myself uncomfortable for a little bit, but I'm going to be all the better for it. And so, it's hard enough to get people to work out. Working out sucks. But now we have to also say you're going to have to be uncomfortable in states of boredom. That's an even deeper layer, You would think it'd be easier than working out, though. No, but 10 minutes a day, set a timer, 10 minutes a day, I'm telling you. Meditation. So what you're saying is you need some Sam Harris style meditation. I completely agree. I do love some of Sam Harris's more deep thinking podcasts about meditation. He's got a app, I believe, Headspace. I don't use it. I think you have to subscribe to it, and I am 100% poor. But if I had some money, I would do it. The fish fry, thank you, the fish fry. Yes, I'm not a big fan of fish. I can do ahi tuna. I had pecan-encrusted ahi tuna one time, and it changed my life forever. But, I'm not a huge fan of shrimp unless it's like popcorn shrimp. I could do popcorn shrimp. I like sushi. I'm an eel sushi type of guy. He did a backflip into the crowd. We need a president who will backflip into a crowd. I saw, I think in the subreddit, someone posted a picture of Joe Biden. I forgot his name. I forgot Joe Biden. I forgot the man in front. I forgot his name. That's how little I think about Joe Biden. But there was a picture of him with like his mouth open, looking at Yang speaking on the stage like, oh shit, how is this happening? This wasn't supposed to happen, He doesn't know what's coming. He's not ready for the Yang gang, the Yang train. Yo, I just became a $1 Dividend Report patron. Hey, Austin, thank you. Thank you so much. Guys, I really, really do appreciate the support that you're giving the Dividend Report. Scott Santons, if you know Scott Santons, he's probably the biggest voice in the UBI arena. And he kind of has this thing where he's like, I'm going 100% in support of a universal basic income. In order to do it, I'm living a universal basic income from a camaraderie of patrons who are basically supporting me. $1 per person. And if I have 1,000 people who like what I'm doing, then I'm able to do it and then report back on what it's like to be in the universal basic income. So for my patrons, I will really quickly just kind of talk a little bit about myself and say, this is what I'm doing full time. I've got this anxiety disorder, and I actually just walked out of my last job, and I had saved up enough money to be like, I'm just gonna work on my passion because I need to do this. This disorder that I've got, it causes me to pull my hair out. So if you see these patches on my head, that's the reason why. You don't even realize that you're doing it when you've got this. And I kind of had this moment where it was like, if I'm staying in this position, I'm going to go crazy. And it's going to be worse than if I have to deal with some financial insecurity. So I did that, and I'm living off of some reserve funds at the moment, trying to come through, trying to find my passion, trying to make it happen. There's definitely a personal bias that I have for a universal basic income in ways that it would help me really achieve the type of lifestyle that they say go after your passions, do your dream, but our society really isn't set up in that way. So what I'm trying to say is I'm not intending on touching the patron fund for anything other than my monthly rent. And if for any reason the dividend report doesn't work out, I'm going to see if there's some sort of refund that may possibly happen if I don't get up to $500 or something like that, because I currently live off of $550 a month. I am so frugal. I have lived for like 6 months off of ramen. You don't even know. Sometimes I get the black bean ramen, and it's a treat. but for real, like, I'm wanting to go through and do whatever I can to make a universal basic income a reality, given my skill sets and stuff like that. So that was specifically for my patrons. Maybe I could have just put that in a video and let it for whoever's following me. What I'm really trying to say is it means so much to me that you're willing to toss even $1 for real, because the mechanics of the future that I see happening are really just $1 here, $1 there, if you've got the income that allows for it. But I would never ask anyone who doesn't have the ability to even give $1 there, because I understand exactly what that's like. I'm currently in the position. So thank you so much. That's a really cool thing for you to do. Hi, Dad. Makina, thank you for being in the stream. How are you doing tonight? I hope everything is well with you. I wish someday that I can do something that's worthy of patronage, for sure. And as I continue forward, if I'm successful with this, I would love to be able to create things that are specifically meant for people who are interested. You know, like the patron goals on Patreon are specifically meant for this, but until I'm actually able to, right, Maslow's hierarchy, you're not able to do more until you got the basics met. But that's like a very cool thing. Like, this is what humanity was doing before we got trapped into this weird civilization thing, this mass globalized world of factory lines and employmentship and everything. I love telling people about this, but people revolted against the introduction of the clock tower in small towns and villages, because the idea that you were suddenly going to be on someone else's time, it infuriated everyone. I just had this exchange with this Bernie Sanders supporter who said people who have invisible disabilities, aka they're perfectly fine and they just don't want to work. I was like, that was the entire human population at one point. They were basically domesticated into showing up for the man, you know? And that was a process. You had to get these people out of these villages where they were tilling their own food, working their own land. And that process was a process of domestication. It's human nature to not want to be domesticated in that way. We hate being domesticated. The entire process of growing up is one of domestication. You're being instilled upon you these beliefs, these systems, and all things like that. Yeah, I'm referencing the 4 agreements right now. All right, hold on. Before we go down all that way, some more comments real quick. Harris's podcast is called Waking Up. Did he change it, or is it still Waking Up? I think it may be Making Sense at this time. He changed it over. He rebranded. I'm wondering if I can rebrand in some way. Like I said, I don't want Yang to get too stale. If you really can't afford the app, then you can email them and he will give you access to the content for real. Okay, well, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely do that. I would love it if you could, like send me something back. To have an exchange with Sam Harris would be amazing. As someone who's trying this speaking from just like off the cuff, right? Speaking whatever's entering my mind and putting it out there, I have such a deep, deep respect for Sam Harris and the intellect that he's able to put out in that manner. Incredibly intelligent person, incredibly. The app is Waking Up. The podcast is Making Sense. Okay. All right. Good to have that defined and cleared out. I was just listening to the one that he did with his wife, and it was just a treat. Him and his wife were like laughing. I've never heard Sam Harris laugh. And then she's constantly like just saying these things, and some of them are like inside jokes. And then he can't keep it together. It's great. I hate that he can get like politicized in some ways by this group or that group. We should all be able to say, yeah, maybe I don't agree with that, but overall I appreciate a deep thinking type of discussion. So, we're no longer the Harry Potter stream. That was short-lived. I have been thinking that we're going to be talking about this Michael Brooks videos today. This is also more of a test for one of my followers that I've got on Twitter. Raph, if you're in this stream, this is your chance to let me know. He says that I should not go through and address this video until I'm ready to make a polished one. But if he's not in here, I'm going to go through and do this. And what I will ask, and I don't think it's going to happen, but, you know, no one clip this because I am working on a full post-edited video. We're going to go through and listen to exactly what Michael Brooks, who is apparently a hardcore Bernie Sanders supporter, has to say about Andrew Yang. And to the day, it's the most pushback that I've seen against Andrew Yang. And what I'm really wanting to do is, I'm not trying to attack the other side here. I want to open up a discussion. And, you know, maybe they'll hear me out in some way and they'll come back. And also, before I do kind of put on the headphones and we pull up the video here, I am saying this as someone who has an invisible disability, who is not reached by the current safety net, who understands that there are 13 million other Americans in poverty that are not reached by the existing safety net, because I'm going to be criticizing the safety net during this video. And so I feel like I just had to kind of put that out there before we get started. So without any further ado, I'm going to go ahead and put on these headphones, and we're going to see if this works or not. There's going to be some tech stuff going on here. I'm going to have to... Ooh, that's weird. It changes speaking completely. I'm going to be bringing up the video. It's going to be on the screen back there, but also in the corner right here. Let me see. Oh, it's not going to let me do this, is it? It's not going to let me do this. Desktop. Microphone. Cool. You know, it shouldn't be this difficult. It should not. I see what I can do, though. I could just go into a new stream. I should have tested this out before we tried. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll just still put it behind me. So you'll kind of see it back there. And I'm going to make sure that we can hear it.
All right. In case we clip this,
You guys hear this okay?
I'm going to try really hard because Andrew Yang fans do not seem to have, in general, a very well-developed sense of humor. So I'm going to try not to make any jokes about Andrew Yang. Although I don't think that the jokes that we've done have been particularly cutting or nasty.
Now, real quick, Michael, like I'm coming at this from an open angle. I think that we both want the same thing. It's a better society, a better functioning society, especially for the most vulnerable members inside of it. And so I'm hoping that you may open your gates. I come with some data, and I promise that it's just data, nothing else. So that's a joke. You said that we didn't have humor. That's a joke right there for you. So,
and nothing that we have said about Andrew Yang is
a
predicated
little quiet, but still audible.
on a personalized premise about the guy. I have no idea what his intentions are. He could be a very nice guy. My problem is that offering $1,000 a month as an opt-in system could prove to be devastating for people who rely on serious benefits. It will have a long-term encroaching effect on all universal systems of welfare. I'm unclear what his position on Medicare for All is, and like other things, it seems to very much change depending on whether he's talking to a left-wing host or a right-wing host. My sense is he supports some kind of public option. I know that.
So yes, that is correct. Andrew Yang is for Medicare for all, but he's not for specifically taking away all forms of private insurance. So he doesn't think ACA is the correct solution. He wants to go further than that, but not all the way as far as Bernie. But, you know, if we're looking towards Nordic countries, Nordic socialist countries, then it's more along the lines that we would see in Germany, Canada, things of that nature. So we can continue to have that discussion and find a good way of doing it. Overall, though, if you've read The War on Normal People, you'll know that he does not intend for for the universal basic income to be just a subsidy to healthcare costs. We don't want that monthly $1,000 to just be soaked up by medical costs.
He opposes a $15 minimum wage. And I also know that he doesn't have any other plans for, like, as an example, if you give people $1,000 a month without
Okay, I'll just let him continue on a little bit.
Universal rent control legislation, as an example, most of that money, I have no doubt, will be absorbed by landlords. What other problems have we had on a policy level with Andrew Yang, guys?
I mean, just the way that he frames his non-support for a raise in the minimum wage exposes that he really does see his UBI as a subsidy for employers who aren't willing to raise the wages of the people that they're employing.
Okay, so the minimum wage discussion. It's not that he is a... Here, let me make sure I got the mic and everything set up well here. It's not that Andrew Yang is against the idea of a minimum wage increase. He has said before that if Congress were to come through and pass a minimum wage bill, if he were president, he would sign it. It's that Andrew Yang is looking at the problem of employment and labor through a pragmatic lens. These kind of concepts are shifting in ways that, we can't look at them at the same way as we could have in the past. So it's not that we're saying that businesses can't afford to pay their workers a livable wage. Rather, we're saying they're not going to, and it's naive to expect that they will. The reasoning for this is that increasingly it appears that the industries of today, that the titans of industry of today, are employing far fewer people than the titans of industry of yesteryear. This can be explained in many kind of comparisons, but let's just take Netflix and Blockbuster. Netflix, the successor to Blockbuster, employs 14,000 people, whereas Blockbuster employed more than 60,000 people at the height of its career. Netflix takes home a much bigger check at the end of every quarter as well, while also employing fewer people. So if we're thinking that Amazon and Walmart are competing within the same market, the same applies. Amazon employs 350,000 people, while Walmart employs 1.6 million people. Now, Bernie Sanders effectively got Amazon to raise the wages for its lowest paid workers. And they did an interesting thing after that happened. They went through and they had a PR person. I think it may have been Bezos himself. I should know this, and they said, "We hope that our competitors will follow our lead and increase wages for their workers as well." And they did this. They were flexing, okay, or were they hitting the whoa? I'm working on that. I'm trying to stay hip with the kids. They were flexing on their competitors in this moment, and we shouldn't expect to see anything else. They know that they have an inherent advantage because they've got the technological and the reach. They're soaking up so much of the market share of retail in general. Remember, we have 30% of malls closing this year alone. It is an apocalypse for the retail market in general. Now, raising the minimum wage, if you do not expect Walmart to take a look at labor, if you're a business owner, labor is the biggest business expense in general. It's not realistic to expect them to then turn and say, we have to do something about where most of our money is being spent as business expenses in order to maintain grasp on our ever-shrinking market share of retail in general and be proactive about the future, even if we are in a pretty good spot in this moment. This is the nature of competitive markets. So if you're not expecting Walmart to go through and cut hours, automate more, and just generally try to find any way that they can increase their profit as the burden of labor is put upon them, then you're not correctly understanding capitalism in general. And I understand that you're anti-capitalists, but where we are right now, that's what's going to happen. So the question at this point should really be, what is it that your candidate, Bernie Sanders, has to propose to deal with the effects that a minimum wage increase will have? And it will have on a certain amount of workers completely displaced by automation. We've talked about how there are current numbers with The McKinsey Institute talking about in the next 10 years, the grim, dire numbers for retail call centers, manufacturers, and increasingly so, truck drivers. They are at risk. What kind of a relationship do we see a minimum wage increase having with what we already know is happening? I don't think it's going to slow things down. That's just what I'm referencing here. So again, Yang said he would sign that bill if it comes to him, but he's thinking 2 steps ahead here. We have to begin disconnecting labor and income, or else we're going to run into some very significant issues as work, labor, and all of these concepts are changed dramatically by types of displacement that humanity has never seen before, and it's unrealistic to compare this with things of like the Industrial Revolution. The Industrial Revolution never had software, never had digitally replicable for zero cost types of automation and AI and things like that, machine learning. So we've got the $1,000. Yang is saying, and isn't it more progressive to come through and say the types of automation that are displacing workers are, we're going to take a slice of that and make sure it goes to everyone so that they aren't completely just screwed over. You're going to get it no matter what. And 2, the freedom dividend is a minimum wage increase. And it's not just for the smaller percentage of the overall employment numbers who are employed at the minimum. It's for everyone. If you're making $16 an hour, you're going to get the $1,000 too. It's for everyone, and it's there if you're employed or not. Even on a $7.25 minimum wage, $1,000 on top of that is just underneath $15 per hour. And again, the types of effects that we see from a universal basic income in general are so transformative. This is why I feel like it would behoove you to ask Andrew Yang onto your show, but also to be more learned and knowledgeable about the studies done into UBI. Scott Santon's Guy Standing, the Universal Basic Income podcast with Jim Pugh and Owen Poindexter, Rutger Bregman, all of these individuals have already had these discussions, and they've talked about the pros of UBI, the downfalls of UBI possible. I've yet to actually see one, other than the fact that money lenders get completely freaking screwed. But that's not a downfall in my book. And what's its relationship to the safety net? So these types of discussions go very far into helping you understand why we should go forward. For instance, part-time employment raises 17%. We see rates of entrepreneurship raise 301% in some studies because the lower socioeconomic rungs now have access to capital and inflows of wealth that they've never had in the history of modern society. So you're able to let people transition. That's the point. That's the forward-thinking solution that Yang provides. You're transitioning to new forms of work, giving them basic security and the ability to do so. So through and through, if we're talking about minimum wage here, again, it's not that he's trying to subsidize the capitalist. It's that he is seeing the ways in which these businesses are smart. They're going to get around minimum wage increases, and he's doing what he can to help the people most in need. So we're going to continue on here a little bit.
Right. And it's basically a system that he is creating to save capitalism, the system that we have right now.
To save capitalism. It's weird. Anything that helps capitalism is immediately off the table for them. But acknowledging where capitalism's going to completely trick you is not the same thing as saving it. In fact, if you see the transformative ways in which people pool their UBI together, you'll see that this is not saving capitalism, it's evolving past capitalism.
From the problems that it's creating through attacks on the majority of people, while at the same time taking away benefits from those who need it the most and putting them at a lower level. So like if you are already unable to achieve so much wealth because you don't have the same abilities as others and you're not able to work, now you're in a situation where everyone else is $1,000 richer than you each month.
Yeah.
Yep.
We need to illustrate this point because it's something Yang fans never understand, which is like
So before we go further here, it sounds right now that they're setting up a zero-sum economy argument. And I do believe that what he says right after this asserts that it's basically the idea that if someone else does better than you and you stay right where you are worse off. Again, a universal basic income is attacking that idea, but let's hear what he has to say.
Let's say I have $1,200 a month in handicap transportation costs, right? I don't get Yang Bucks because I need that $1,200. That means every one of you guys is getting the Yang Bucks. So you can buy some video games, maybe go to the coast or something, like Airbnb something. I can't do that because I have to get this wheelchair. There's no reason that he exempts people with disability payments, for instance, other than ideological reasons of attacking the welfare state.
Right. And doesn't he also
Okay, so there's a couple things here. I remember on the video precluding this that individual said that he was looking at SSDI. I think that's what he's talking about in this area right here, was one of the things that wouldn't be stacking. Well, it's recently been clearly stated that SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, will be stacked on top of the universal basic income, so it's inaccurate to say that this person would not be getting more. But SSI itself, which is a employment-based disability payment with clawbacks, that would not be stackable. But in this scenario, I think that this individual will be okay. But let's just go ahead and say that he's not. Let's, for the sake of this discussion, say that he would be staying exactly where he is. He's going through and saying all these individuals are going to be able to plan these beach trips and buy all these video games, but me, someone who's already been receiving help, I'm not able to, I'm looking out the window and all these people are having so much fun and I'm worse off for it. I can't better myself. Well, again, this is missing the overarching data that's been shown by countless studies ranging from Alaska to India, Finland to Namibia to Lebanon, all of these places. What's shown is that you get this rippling outwards effect in the lower socioeconomic rungs, but also cascading upwards as well, where even outside of the test group, I guess the control you would call it, it expands outwards this types of post-scarcity mindset. They're no longer, bound by the zero baseline that you start at, and you see the effects in well-being, but you also see people pulling their cash together to make collective community decisions that would previously have been unthinkable based on the scarcity mindset overall. That everyone benefits, even people not receiving the universal basic income are better off. And as well, remember, these people are most likely living with at least one other adult, and they're going to be better off just off of that fact alone. But let's continue and hear what they have to say here.
so say, or the logic, and again, it depends on which audience he's speaking to, but if you have enough people opting out of these programs, then they become much easier to attack because they help less people, so therefore they're more politically vulnerable.
So here's that rhetoric of attacking the welfare state, and I think later on, tech issues. Later on, they go through and point out this segment in the Dave Rubin podcast to assert this. So, like I said earlier, I'm saying this as one of 13 million people under the poverty line, not receiving any help whatsoever, that there are inefficiencies that do exist within our welfare state, and you shouldn't be able to immediately strike down as a libertarian Trojan horse attacking the most vulnerable people, to acknowledge that there are ways in which the safety net, one, misses people, like I said, 13 million people, but two, and more disturbingly, actually perpetuates poverty, actually makes poverty continue, actually has systems of racial discrimination and systems of overall theocratic control. There's a article by The Atlantic that talks about, 1 in 5 people who qualify for temporary assistance for needy families actually gets it. So where does the rest of the money go? Well, you see that there is Christian overnight camps being funded, abstinence-only sexual education, and pro-marriage advertisements. This is money that was meant, it's coming from the taxpayer meant for needy families to wind up eventually as cash for them. But instead, it's used, sure, by right-wing, more right-leaning administrations to not get the cash to people in need, but to make them jump through these hoops of ways in which we say, well, the poor need to act in this way to be productive members of society. And what's frustrating too is in this article it states that you increasingly see that with states with increased minority populations, increased black populations, the money rarely goes to the black families and more often is spent on these types of programs that they're forced to go through in order to just get that money. And it's such an issue in that way. And we have to be able to talk about, well, if these, this is the thing I want to say is if means-tested welfare was going to end poverty, poverty wouldn't exist. But there's obviously some cracks and some faulty issues going on. And if we can say, hey, maybe it would be better to have those inefficiencies be laid bare by the people who would be better off of $1,000 switching and then saving money on those inefficiencies. Then at that point, I wouldn't trust Dave Rubin with the savings of that inefficiency. I would trust, though, an overall society that is now better off to use the savings involved with lowering costs on the current existing welfare state to then bolster the special needs case that needs more than $1,000 in cash. Like I said, 1 out of 5 people get TANF. 1 out of 5 people qualify for disability. 1 out of 5 people that qualify currently get disability. 1 out of 4 qualifying for housing vouchers get housing assistance. EITC only goes to people who are already currently employed. The average food stamp benefit is $133 or $1.50 per meal. If it's better to get the $1,000, then let's just get them the $1,000. And like I've said before, a UBI plus program would be great, but in the case of saying, hey, this is a great across the aisle bipartisanship appeal, I am more than happy for it. And yes, I am saying that as someone who lives off of $550 a month. So anyways, continuing on here.
Add to which the whole thing is funded by a VAT tax. Now, a lot of people have a lot of weird ideas about what this means, but the reality is that it's a value-added tax. That is the most regressive type of taxation known to humankind. Because if you are poor, more of your income is taken up by that tax on necessities. That's just reality. He says that this is a VAT that is aimed at companies like Amazon because it will be a VAT that will hit transactions with Amazon. This makes very little sense because when he says transactions, as far as I understand, that means on your end, on the consumer end. I don't see how that helps tax Amazon. Maybe he means a slight increase in sales tax for Amazon, but I'm not clear from anything he said.
Okay, so the value-added tax. Yang's primary proposal to fund the universal basic income is a 10% value-added tax. What is a value-added tax, and how is it different than a sales tax? Well, the difference here is how it's incurred. Real quick, just a quick note, 10% value-added tax is half the amount that exists in European Nordic countries, the type of social Nordic countries we think of. So it's half that amount, and that doesn't exist with a UBI in juxtaposition. But real quick, the difference between a VAT and a sales tax. A sales tax is incurred at the point of purchase at the cash register. The consumer pays 100% of that tax, and it heads off to the government to be used for those discretionary purposes. A value-added tax, on the other hand, is incurred on each point in the supply chain. So if you're making a pencil, the lumberjack getting the wood, selling it over to the factory that's taking those raw goods and doing with that, you get 10% from that transaction. And then from that factory over to the retailer, 10% as well. Now, what does this look like for the consumer? Well, in the worst case scenario, you could expect that 10% is being passed from each part of the supply chain, and at the end of it, it just gets lumped up, and to the consumer, it looks like hell. I've got a 10% sales tax. But the difference here is that this is an unavoidable tax. You can't get around this whatsoever. So if you're putting this in place, then Amazon, which is currently paying 0 at all, will not be able to avoid it. And in this way, you're able to extract the revenue needed for the universal basic income. And you may be thinking, well, that's fine and dandy, but now that the consumer is having to pay 10% more, aren't we just back where we started? Well, here's the thing. We're not appreciating the fact that the consumer is now $12,000 richer per year. So if you think about it this way, a 10% value-added tax is only being put on consumer goods, so it's not being taxed on healthcare, education, or housing. So when you're going out, you're buying goods. That's what's being taxed. You would have to spend, since it's a 10% VAT, and in this scenario, you're expecting that 10% VAT is always 100% of the time being passed by the manufacturers, which is a false assumption, because sometimes, especially in competitive markets, you would see them absorb some of the cost to get ahead. But assuming that 100% of it is passed 100% of the time, and it looks like a 10% sales tax, you would have to spend, as a consumer, $120,000, right? Because it's a 10% VAT, to put more into the value-added tax system than you're receiving from it, the $12,000. And I did the math on this myself, and feel free to correct me if you'd like, but the average consumer making $75,000 a year only spends $20,000 on the types of goods that a value-added tax may be put on. So that would be $32,000. I'm so sorry. That'd be $30,000 at that point if they spent exactly the same as they did. And they're still, they're still much, much better off. And that's the average consumer. From my math, it is physically impossible as the poorest members of society to pay more into this system than you receive. You just can't do it. You'd have to get richer, first of all. So what this means is that, sure, it's a regressive tax. It's on consumption, but it's only affecting the highest consumers in our society, the people paying more than $120,000 on VAT goods. That means that it's a disincentive, but it's also a reward system. I mean, not a reward system, but it compensates the rest of the country for the highest consumers in our society. So it is effectively a climate-friendly policy, as well as something that puts money in the hands of every single individual and every single family. So just ending the conversation at it's a value-added tax and that's regressive. One, again, this is half the amount that exists in European countries, and they don't even have a UBI along with it, and we like to look to them for guidance on social policies. And two, this is putting wealth directly into the hands of consumers. So I think it's completely inaccurate to say these things. So let's continue on here.
And this is also
one more thing, though. You also avoid the problem with, oh, well, if you're raising a wealth tax on people, which, again, like a minimum wage, Yang has said, if Congress passes a bill, I'm going to sign it. But he's thinking, again, 2 steps ahead, pragmatically. The wealthy can't avoid this by putting their money into tax havens. Jeff Bezos can't avoid this by just never declaring a taxable event, because, again, these people are smart enough to loophole their way out of paying them, even when taxes were at 93% during Eisenhower's presidency. They didn't pay that. They didn't pay all of that. They have, intelligent people who will save that money for them. You cannot avoid this value-added tax. And then 3, it avoids the question of wealth flight. Oh, well, aren't all the wealthy just gonna, move to different countries? Which I don't think is a good objection to make, but inherently with any conversation on anyone on the right, you're gonna get that objection. So
the same person who rejects a wealth tax out of hand because it would be politically impossible in the Mehdi Hassan interview. This is the argument he made. So he's saying on one hand that he'll use a tax which is universally recognized as hitting consumers to hold Silicon Valley company monopolies accountable, but then he won't go after them on trust busting or tax grounds because that's politically impossible. So I just request, and I know people who love him are very touchy and very, very emotionally invested in this, but just like to use the terminology you like, just follow the logic of that argument a little bit. You want to implement a value add tax on consumer goods that will target consumers. You say it will hit Amazon, but you don't particularly spell it out, and you can send me the links if he spells out.
Yeah, that is effectively what's happening. I mean, I kind of visualize it as a sidecar to the main economy. It is a depleting kind of space of cash that is funded by consumers. Let's be honest. Yeah, it would be great if the wealthy are coming through and paying more of their share. And they will be to some degree with this. It disproportionately affects people who are spending a lot more. And it's filling up and it's depleting every month. It's a circular economy. And we're seeing more and more of these types of circular economies being tried in other countries.
Out what version of sales tax versus consumer tax, what version will hit the company on the other end, fine. But then we all know he won't do any big, bold thing to actually hold these companies accountable because supposedly that's politically unacceptable, politically impossible. So think of how that actually is going to end up playing out. It will be profoundly regressive.
And just to hit one more point about this subsidy for employers, think of a company like Walmart, right? Walmart, pays their employees poverty wages that they have to use government programs to get by. Under Yang Bucks, for example, if you got, let's say, $800 a month in food stamps, you would pick to take his UBI over that. And that's the way that they frame it. So what's happening now to those workers is everyone else is now getting an extra $1,000 on top of it, while this worker who's basically is already being subsidized by the federal government because this one of the wealthiest companies in the world refuses to pay them a living wage. Yang wants to jump into that by continuing to subsidize those workers while creating a much larger wealth gap between those workers and the rest of society.
And so we're going to play.
So he has come through and said, if you stay on current means-tested welfare, we're going to increase your benefits to offset the burden of the VAT. Again, the overall notion here is that we don't want to make anyone worse off. I'm not sure what he's saying right there, because there is the issue, and I've brought this up, that you have this group of people, these workers who are not being paid enough to live. And the taxpayer is effectively, I think, $6 billion, $9 billion. I think the numbers have changed, and now that Walmart's raised their wages to $11 per hour. But for a long time there, and probably increasingly so, still the case, maybe less, the taxpayers going through and spending money on food stamps that are going to Walmart workers because Walmart has cut their hours so much, or they're just overall not paying them enough to eat. And then you get like a secondary effect where they go and they spend their food stamps at Walmart, so we subsidize their payrolls. And overall, to me, this is a gigantic issue. And I see UBI as the answer to that, because if you're funding the basic necessities of all workers, right, well, then you're no longer using the leverage of poverty in order to extract labor from these individuals. So, we often think of unions as the way in which people combine their labor and try to fight for fair pay, fair working conditions. And one of the effective ways of doing that is a labor strike of reducing the amount that they're able to rely on you as a worker, reducing their overall revenue, and eventually they'll have to come to the table. So with a UBI, it's basically a universal basic union, right? You have the ability to reject giving your labor to a company if you don't think that, one, they're paying you what you're worth, or two, that they're treating you unfairly. And so what you would effectively hope to see in that moment is a revaluation, an increase in the bargaining power that the laborer has coming to the table. If you're not going to pay me more than $15 an hour, well, screw it. I'm going to go and look somewhere else. I'm going to go look somewhere else that will pay me something that's worth my time. And I think I strongly want to see that happen, especially as we've automated away enough, because as long as we're using poverty as a way to get people to do work for less than living wages, the workers need to be able to say no. They need to be able to say no. And to the degree that a universal basic income is going to allow that to happen, I don't see that as subsidizing the corporate oligarchy. I actually see it as the exact opposite.
This Yang clip in a second where he confirms everything that we've been saying in his own words. But the reason that I care.
Real quick, I just noticed Helen something brought up a really good point in the comments. She said a strike works on supply and demand, but it doesn't work as well if there's an alternative supply of AI. And this is a huge issue that I brought up. And what I've said too is that automation isn't just a one-to-one, like the job's gone, right? Automation's increasingly things like the gig economy. Automation's like Uber, whereas you can say, I'm not going to work. I'm going to try and strike. But then like the app goes through and notifies everyone within a mile radius, hey, we're going to pay you twice as much as normal because we don't have enough drivers right now. It's leveraging the ways in which this technology is accessible to everyone. Labor is now easily distributed as much as a like on social media, and that's before AI has just 100% wiped out the labor's leverage. So
care about this because look, the reality is that this is basically a novelty candidacy that has like no currency outside of online. If you mention this to normal people, they don't know who he is.
I don't know. The reaction at the fish fry makes me think you're about to get some surprise.
But it disturbs me profoundly that one, any like energy that could be going into something constructive like Sanders is going into this. And secondly, we're
wanting to talk about constructive conversation. I was expecting that in 2019, the discussion on the left was going to be UBI, and we're bringing this up, and that segment of the universal basic income might have this effect. Do we want that? Well, no. Maybe we should deal with that. I thought that was gonna be happening, but instead. No, Andrew Yang's a Trojan horse. Andrew Yang is just here to hurt the most vulnerable. There's no constructive conversation. And that's why I said I want to come at this from the same angle. So again, don't clip this. I'm working on a well-polished video. I'm not trying to attack this group because I think we have the same end goal in mind. But yeah.
He's monopolizing space in an area, that it is ultimately going to matter. Are robotics going to cost people jobs in the future? Yes, to some extent. It's actually disputed, and he might be exaggerating those effects. He might even be exaggerating the effects of what kind of jobs are going to be lost first. Some of the jobs that actually will be lost fairly soon, according to some people, are like white-collar jobs.
So there's the objection to, well, maybe automation isn't actually causing this problem. But I mean, I've got my tweets. You can find them on my profile where like you can see on a graph like increase in robot usage and then increase in Trump votes. There's that direct correlation. And I know it's not causation, but correlation to a depression of wages, which I assert, one, yes, globalization has had an effect on, but automation is increasingly happening. And from what we see, the pace, it's going to just double. It's going to continue faster and faster. So, oh man, what was that last thing he said? Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm losing my...
He might even be exaggerating the effects of what kind of...
Right. So he said white collar, like middle of the line work, as if it's like, oh, well, it's not going to affect the poorest of us overall, as if that's somehow any different. Part of the biggest issue is someone on Twitter was like, the lowest income people in the country voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. And I was saying, this isn't an issue of like just like low income people. This is the fact that people are losing their identity. People who had well-paying jobs, things that, jobs that would take care of their family, are losing their abilities to continue that quality of life. And all of a sudden, the message, make America great again, they hear that, their ears perk up, they go, yeah, what the hell is happening? I'm doing what my father did. I'm doing what my father's fathers did. Why are things getting harder? well, it's the damn immigrants, it's this, it's that, and you stir up and you soak up all these racial tensions, all of these divisive types of psychological scarcity mindset, tribalistic issues. It should be a terrifying thing, not like a sigh of relief that managers and increasingly data analysts and things of that nature are going to be out of a job soon. That's the scary part. That's the scariest part. Okay.
If jobs are going to be lost first. Some of the jobs that actually will be lost fairly soon, according to some people, are like white collar jobs. But the idea that his answer to this is to capitulate to Silicon Valley and these companies just as a matter of course, and then pay people off with a relatively speaking small amount of money that will be distributed in a...
Okay. Again, I live off of $550 a month, and I understand. I live in the South, kind of outside, a semi-rural area. I do live with 3 roommates too. But I have to question anyone who comes through and says $1,000 is not a lot. He's buying votes for breadcrumbs. I have to question how close a person saying that has ever been to poverty. $1,000 is anything but little. And again, the data that UBI studies have shown, either in parallel with safety nets or in the complete absence of safety nets, shows that people pool their money together. If $1,000 doesn't get you through alone, you've got people around you, and the living conditions, and we see this a lot with Latino communities, and they're extremely smart, extremely hardworking. They get these community pots. Everyone puts 10% in, and then when someone gets sick, when someone gets ill, they go to that pot and they're like, "Yeah, we got you covered." They've got insurance systems, and that's what we effectively see in these trials of a universal basic income. So again, for people saying that $1,000 is just nothing, geez, you have a lack of creative imagination, one, but you're also not seeing the results of studies, the data from universal basic income.
Very unfair way that jeopardizes the welfare state is a big problem. And I'll just say, look, if you want to add UBI to a full Medicare for all social democracy system that is paid for through reclaiming wealth taken by the corporate sector and oligarchs, cool, I'm with it. But that's not what he's proposing. Here he is on day.
Okay, so this is making a presupposition that it is worse. If we can't just fund this directly through wealth redistribution of the types of scales we want, then it's pointless. That's such a fallacy, because like I've said, if you can just see the data, you can see that it's a net positive in every conceivable way. It doesn't leave people worse off. None of the social safety nets are being completely destroyed. You're lifting 13 million people who get nothing above $1,000 a month to begin with. So you're making a value assertion at this point, and to me, it doesn't add up. It doesn't add up whatsoever. I mean, how could you look at like a city like Detroit and say, we're going to pump in this many millions of cash every single month, and then say it's just not worth it? It's just not worth it if we can't get someone making an average of $133 on food stamps per month. If he can't continue to make that money, then it's not worth it. Even though he might be 7.5 times better off taking the universal basic income, it kind of, it doesn't make sense to me, but let's continue listening to what they have to say.
Rubin, of all places, talking about what he's really up to.
When you say everyone, you mean the person that's from someone that's unemployed to someone that is worth $20 million. They're both getting that $1,000?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, now how are we going to...
And I'm so sorry, but I had a couple more things to say about that. One, yes, he is doing this on top of Medicare for All. He is in favor of a wealth tax if it passes through to him and gets on his desk. But again, you get through, you only need 51% of the vote. You pass this, it gets through, and you're through the loopholes, right? You've acknowledged all the ways that the corporate oligarchy is going to try and screw you, and it will. They are a oiled machine. And antitrust laws that currently exist right now, they don't apply as well to the Silicon Valley, right? Things are changing. We got to be proactive about this. We got to be forward thinking. So you get past the issue of how are the wealthy going to get around a wealth tax. You get past the issue of all of those things. You get your foot in the door. And you dramatically change everything. Come on. Like, if we unify together in just this one moment, we get the foot in through the door in 2020, everything changes. Just work with us. Just don't shut this conversation down.
To pay for this thing, right? That has to be the next question.
Yes. So first, it ends up costing a lot less than most people think, and there are a few reasons for this. Number one is that about half of Americans are already getting direct support from the government in some form. So my dividend would be universal, but it's opt-in, and if you opt in, you forego benefits from certain existing programs. So the headline cost goes down a lot very quickly.
So this is like someone that's getting some other social welfare or something, and then if they choose to take the UBI. So, like, what type of thing would they lose? Like food stamps, or like?
Yes. So it's full food stamps, housing subsidies, fuel subsidies,
right?
Cash and cash-like programs. We have about 120 welfare programs, most of which are cash or cash-like. So this excludes Medicaid, but it would include food stamps and most other welfare programs.
Right. And can you split the difference on that? So could you say I'm going to only take $500 a month UBI, and I'm going to take, 500 a month? So you can't. So you have to pick one, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to people who are on various welfare programs, and they love the idea of getting $1,000 unconditional because they dislike case manager.
I'm sorry.
Like I said, I mean, if you were to speak to anyone who is receiving these benefits right now, there was just a Vice documentary on. No, I'm sorry. This was linked by. May have been Joseph Kinney on Twitter. It was a really interesting video. ABC did a special, maybe it was 60 Minutes, back in 2017, discussing the increasing precariousness of life for millions of people. And they had this one guy speaking. He was like, I don't like being on food stamps. I don't enjoy, I'd like to be able to go out, make my own money and do my own thing, but it's just not possible. There's no kind of pride involved with these types of systems. There's stigma. There's all sorts of things where if you're making $1,100 in total off the means tested welfare, you would gladly give up the $100 to not have to deal with the strings, the clawbacks associated with working more, and on and on and on. So it shouldn't be immediately viewed as this is it. That's what he said it. We caught him.
They like it, and he's gonna go and just list these bureaucratic
I love that
bullshit.
idea, Mike.
Yeah, it's just a great.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but this is the same thing that offended me to begin with. This is analogous to slumlords and the real estate speculators in this city going to people who are totally cash strapped and getting them out of apartments that are saving their lives and their housing situation because they're so desperate for liquidity that they will take a deal that makes no sense in the long term. If on balance, your life is just barely getting by through a fusion of these services, you will lose on net $1,000 in cash. But
there's never been any sort of like liquidity that's been reliable and consistent month over month over month over month. Oftentimes, you need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth. This is not a time to be joking, excuse me, but he did say we didn't have any sense of humor. But there's no issue. There's some issue with going through and saying, we're going to give you this $1,000 to $2,000 right now, and then that goes away and you're worse off later. This is coming to you every single month. And let's let him continue.
You will be very tempted to take it because you're cash poor. Mm-hmm. It's an extraordinarily manipulative idea, and that might not be his intention. He might be a wonderful guy, but those are the implications. That's the reality of what this policy does.
And this is the reality about UBI that we've all been talking about before we knew who Andrew Yang was.
Right.
Like 3 years ago, we were having this exact discussion. Like, hey, a UBI might come down the pike. If it looks like this, it's bad, and it looks like this.
Exactly. So let's finish this out.
So it seems like they've just associated, I guess, the fact that Milton Friedman was in favor of this in like the 70s. They've immediately looked at UBI in some certain form and discarded it completely right off the bat, which I feel like just misses the ways in which it does transform in a type of way I feel like the socialists have been wanting for so long. But it somehow is also bipartisan with the right. We've got an opportunity here, and if there are real and true ways in which this does screw people over, then we fix them. But you don't throw this out just to begin with because you immediately assume that it's designed to harm poor people.
And they love the idea of getting $1,000 unconditional because they dislike the case manager, the reporting requirements, everything else. And so you can reduce the enrollments in our existing program significantly. And it brings down the headline cost very quickly, because if someone's already getting $700 in benefits, then the cost is $300 instead of $1,000.
Do we have good accounting numbers on actually how much people are getting? Like, I'm going to guess that a certain amount of people, it may be one thing for food stamps, but when you talk about housing subsidies and things like that, that has to be way more. I mean, the one that I always use is that my sister and her husband live in New York City, struggling to get by. They both have full-time jobs, 2 kids. You can imagine how expensive schools are, and just living in Manhattan and the rest of it. And half of their building is market price and half is rent subsidized. And then what happens is, and I know you know this, is that generation after generation live in the same apartment then for $400.
Okay, so wow, that's Dave's only ability to understand anything has to be mediated through having a sister. But look, so what is he saying there? He's talking about a gradual hollowing out of those vital programs.
Yep.
In exchange for a cash transfer, which will be a net loss for a lot of people. Now, if you're middle class,
they did not provide any sort of data to back up that assertion that this would be on the majority a net loss. Now, I have gone through in this video and asserted why I think even if it was designed to completely eliminate all $600 billion of current welfare expenditure, it would be a hard assertion to make that it's a net loss on people.
and you're concerned about this, I'll stop in a second, but I just want to say, one, advocate and go to Bernie Sanders and go to a good candidate like him and say, look, I get that the Yang thing is bullshit, but I'd like you to order, on top of everything else, as we reclaim money from the oligarchic class, hit people with a UBI. Great. If that's an add-on to everything else and not a substitution for, excellent. And on the other hand, if you think that there is going to be some type of big stimulative effect from this, it mostly won't be.
That you don't have any data to back that assertion up, but there are dozens and upon dozens and dozens of studies that shows no, like this works, and it works in all the ways that the current welfare system does not.
It will be for a little. You know what? It will be great for the podcast business, but in a lot of places, this money will just get sucked up by added rent.
I don't know what he's talking about there.
Yeah,
because there's.
So he's saying it's just going to be sucked up by landowners and rents. And you know what? Of all of the points made within this critique of Yang and UBI, I think this may hold the most water. But again, it's incumbent upon them to assert how exactly that would happen. But following this logic and rhetoric, it would be impossible to pass any sort of policy or program that puts cash in the hands directly of all Americans, because it would be a 100% zero sum as the capitalists, the rentier capitalists and oligarchs just completely suck it up. So why even would we go for a federal jobs guarantee of you're going to be guaranteed a livable wage no matter what, if it's just going to be sucked up by the oligarchs? Rather, though, we can assert that competition does exist within the housing market, and there's two ways in which that competition takes form. One, there's home ownership. People can leave the rentier type of system to own their own home. Now, of course, some of those homeowners themselves will then choose to rent out that home. So we may be back to the same place, but we can't assume that to be 100% to 100%. And two, there are places where $1,000 goes a lot farther. And in some ways, you would want to see a natural revaluation of the housing market, because it's arbitrarily, and also for, not in my backyard type policies and zoning issues, but we'll get to that in just a second, arbitrarily very high for the same reasons that automation has automated out of the Rust Belt and completely sent people from the inner of the country outwards to where opportunity exists. So we would want to be able to see people to take that money and bring it back to where it would go much, much further. Pull it together in many different ways. But you know what? Okay, let's be fair. I'm making assertions just like they're making assertions. But there's only one candidate on the Democratic field right now that has a policy specifically designed to address the housing crisis. I mean, in terms of what's on the website, and that's Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang has put forward a policy to address zoning laws in ways that will help create more affordable housing. And so I am confident in all of these different types of answers to the question of, well, aren't they just going to screw us over? Aren't the rentier people just totally going to screw things over? So now with that being said, again, don't clip any of this. I'm working out a post type of I'm working out a post type of argument for a video that will be post edited, but these are some of my further kind of visions for what the UBI will be used for. I'm waiting for a self-driving RV that I will have, hopefully been able to save up enough money to purchase, and I'll be able to wake up every morning in a new city powered by solar panels on the top of it, in the futuristic type of society that we're rapidly heading towards, right? The technological singularity. But also, too, self-driving vehicles in general will allow for people to live further and further away from inner cities. It will eliminate traffic and allow you to sleep on the commute in the ways in. So there are forward-thinking ways that we can answer the question of rentier capitalism, including rent control, but rent control has many issues that come along with it. But again, I wish that the progressives were having discussions about problems in a progressive lens, but I think that might be a little too much to ask for here.
No control on it to begin with. The first place this will go is landlords' pockets.
Yeah, go to Ruben's example of his sister's rent in New York City. If I'm a New York City landlord, I'm thinking, wait, every one of these people has an extra $1,000 a month. I'm getting me a third of that at least.
And if I am a landowner and I say I'll keep things right where I got, I'm making $1,000 more to myself, then I'll assume more tenants than you. But yes, if it's a very high demand area, we could expect to see more of that soak up. I'm not arguing that.
Absolutely. And it doesn't just need to be New York. It can also be in all of these Midwestern places that these people are always talking about.
And it's just like, you look at when we're talking about rents, for example, the problem with rents in the United States is that the value that you have to pay to your landlord is based on the speculative value of the property itself, which is a capitalism problem, which has created a very unsustainable system in the United States where people can't afford to live really anywhere.
So worry about capitalism, not robots. And if we had a different economic system.
Again, I don't think that they've effectively put forward the data to say that the housing crisis right now is because of capitalism. I mean, ultimately, sure, that's the way things work, but I think that there's much more to say that this is an issue of demand, first and foremost.
These innovations would be freeing up your time and creating broad stakeholder value, not threatening the little meager livelihood you have to begin with. And that's all Andrew Yang is saying. Like, look, do you want a future where the argument is between Peter Thiel saying that there should be private armies of robots that kill poor people on the street, or like the Salesforce guy saying, oh, let's give them a little cash transfer? I still think we can do better than that. So that's why I'm very skeptical of Andrew Yang's incredible shrinking of our political horizons.
I still think and hope that we don't let the tech world dictate future policy that way too.
I would share that hope, Alona. That's why I'm very concerned.
Primarily, they are the ones always talking about a UBI.
So just like, I'm not directly addressing anything that they've said here, but I think that, again, it kind of lacks an overall imagination of what the lower socioeconomic rungs can do collectively with a universal basic income. I happen to think that a lot of the issues that are caused by capitalism are caused in the ways that capitalism exploits poverty and the ways that you're forced to participate in these types of systems. And, for instance, the entire military industrial complex is taking people who are cash poor, financially insecure, and bringing him in there, you know? So in the ways that a UBI will let people say no, even if there are some people who may not have their lives changed significantly at all because they live alone, they live in a high demand housing area, I guarantee they're not going to be sum zero. They're going to be positive in some way, but maybe more people do benefit than others. You know, it's the type of change which is going to come after the fact. This is what I believe in as human capitalism, human-centered capitalism. I think in the ways that you're going to see the vast majority of Americans neglect the system that has undoubtedly very negative types of components and outcomes to it, you'll see a general atrophy occur. And I don't say it's going to be a self-sustaining thing. I'm not saying anything about an invisible hand happening here, but I'm saying we have to be optimistic in some manner about this because, again, in many ways, Andrew Yang is the most progressive candidate running. If you can view it through these angles here, no other candidate has any type of policy that's going to go as far towards providing a way that systemic and fundamental transformative change can occur in the ways that I feel the socialists would love. There's nothing that Bernie is saying. He's got no policies on rent control. He's got no policies on anything. There's no alternative. There's really nothing. And if you do get an alternative of that nature, how the hell are you going to get it through in a legislative manner in this country? When Trump's entire point, when his entire campaigning policy tactic right now is to attack his opponent as an extremist, right? I think Bernie would probably do very well in a general election against Trump. I think that he may very well win, but in terms of who's going to have a lot more better of a shot, I think hands down it's Andrew Yang.
Right. Absolutely. And it's like, clear why.
And it's, you know, and it's wrapped in this like benevolence of like, we realize the impact our technology is having on the world and on society. And so like, we want to start these conversations, but it you know, it's problematic to say the least.
To help with connectivity.
Yeah, no, for real though. I mean, I do like to approach things from a technological perspective here, but 3D printers continue to get cheaper and cheaper every day. At a certain point, it's not too radical to think that you'll be able to print clothes, you'll be able to print furniture from your closet, you'll be able to buy blueprints like you do from Apple, like iTunes songs, for $1, pennies on the dollar, and create your own good. You can own the means of distribution, the means of production. Like, if we could do this right, you could effectively completely just turn capitalism on its head by letting it get to its end goal. And that type of systemic change, we could do it non-violently. There's no way that the vision that these people have is going to end without some extreme turmoil. Like, I think that's what they want, though. I think that's what they want. They don't want to imagine that there could be a way that we could go through and do this peacefully with you know, unconditional cash given to everyone. Yeah, this is a stopgap. This is how we save capitalism at the end of it. But capitalism's at its end of life anyways. It's making itself obsolete as goods become so cheap that they're abundant, right? I would prefer us not have to resort to bloodshed.
You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main.
Okay, so that was the end of it. So again, for anyone who's watching now, don't clip any of this. I highly doubt that they'll see it, and you know, because I don't want to be attacking them. I know that my tone at this point seems a bit combative, and it seems a little presumptuous and everything. Because again, I think we have the same basic type of desire that we want to have. A better society for everyone, including the most vulnerable of us. But it's so problematic that the inaccuracies, the basic inaccuracies, right? So the basic VAT tax, like I brought up, they just have completely backwards. They don't, you know, there was a clear misunderstanding from Michael's end on that. He was like, isn't this just a sales tax, right? And it's providing his 50,000 followers with an inaccurate perspective of UBI, and it doesn't bring up any of the transformative effects that we've seen documented in the actual data, the studies, and the results that we've seen. So, man, I was expecting this episode, honestly. I was going into this episode thinking it might be like 20, 30 minutes, but we really pulled through a while tonight. We're going to wrap up here at this point. I saw like a lot of really good discussion in the chat here, but I'd have to like kind of fall back. I saw one person say that based on assumptions, based on probably what I'm expecting, what we can learn from how the VAT works in Europe, that you could expect 50% of the VAT to wind up at the consumer's door when they're at the cash register. So yeah, but again, even going through and framing it as, yeah, let's just say that 100% of it is always passed along to the consumer, then you're still winding up better overall. So I don't know. I'm such a perfectionist. I don't know if I'll get this video out at all, but that doesn't really matter. I want to thank you guys for helping me secure the bag tonight. A special thanks again to my patrons. Really, you guys are fantastic. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel if you haven't already. Share this with other members of the Yang Gang. Share this with anyone who you think might be interested in the rebuttal that I had to the microbooks interview, if you think I did a pretty good job with it or not. And give me some feedback too. If I missed something, or if something that I said didn't quite sound right to you, I'd be happy to engage in that conversation. We're going to be back tomorrow night. Oh, hey, yeah, by the way, I'll probably be in the watch party for the Tonight Show episode tonight at 11 o'clock. Hopefully they'll have some type of way that I can watch the show. I'm a millennial. I'm a broke, poor millennial, so I don't have cable. You know, the last time that I watched cable, that I had access to cable, was like January of 2009. I love it because obviously this means he's reaching an audience that's not just an echo chamber of all these millennials who obviously love Yang, but I can't get access to him. I had this issue when he was appearing for, oh man, I'm not sure what it was, but I was like, I can't get it in, and it was like YouTube's making me sign into a trial. So I've already used up all my trials. I won't be able to do that or anything like this. Every time that I see my nephews, I get this hope for the future, because you know they'll come over and they'll visit, you know, grandmother's house, and they'll turn on the TV, and then all of a sudden the advertisements will come on and they just go, what? I can't skip this, and they lose their minds. They start having tantrums, and I'm just looking at them like, yeah, you know, you're gonna be all right. You're gonna be all right, kids. I feel good passing the torch to you. Because it's just insane. The entire model of cable, they're double dipping. It was just complete power, unlimited power, where they're able to take from the cookie jar twice. They're charging you for the subscriptions, and then they're selling you and brainwashing you as well, trying to tell you that dentists care about what type of toothpaste you use. Absolute crazy Kafkaesque authoritarian control, signaling through the... Okay, I've had way too much time talking here. I'm just gonna slowly unwind. Thanks so much for watching the stream, guys. I hope you secure the bag in your own way today. Spend 10 minutes out in nature. Look at the color green. Think of something that you're grateful for. I'll probably be right back here 7 o'clock tomorrow, maybe 7:30. So if I'm a little late, that's why. I think that might be a better time slot to shoot for. Yang Gang, thank you guys. I'm signing off. Good night.